Welcome to Comfy Havoc number 2. So this is the last 2 days of Native American slash Indigenous History Month, or Indigenous History slash Native American History Month, or Native History Month, depending on where you come from and what you want to call it. Okay, let's just be grateful that Native Americans have a month. Okay, now I will say respectfully, because I am multicultural, you know, I can celebrate Native Indigenous History Month as well as Black History Month. There is no White History Month because technically history revolves around the people who conquered most of the world. No offense to white people. All right, just make that clear. I also have white ancestry, so I'm not out here to insult anybody. So here's what we're gonna do. Throughout this month, you know, you live and you learn some few things, and you learn about Thanksgiving. You learn the atrocities from some tribes, and some tribes celebrate. Um, this is something that came across my TikTok, so I don't have a whole lot of stake in that because someone told me that it was also a festival before it became Thanksgiving. And before I knew about the truth of certain things in Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving was my only link to my Native American heritage because I literally, honestly, truly to God thought that it was a Native American holiday. I literally thought that. Honestly, truly to God. Never knew that it wasn't. Never knew that it's a time of mourning for natives versus a time of celebration for everyone else. So I actually did not really celebrate Thanksgiving. I did eat some food, but I didn't like go all out like I had been doing for like the last points in my life. Because once I discovered that I'm part native, I'm like, oh dear. I've had a lot of things that I am ashamed of once I had discovered that I was part native since I was a child, because I always wanted to be cowboys. Because when you watch TV, they never tell you how it really was. It makes good shows. Rawhide was a good show. Bonanza was a good show. I'm pretty sure I'm missing a couple of westerns, but I'm only 48, so it's not like I've seen them all. I remember Rawhide because they had Clint Eastwood in it. I remember Bonanza because I think that's the one with Lee Majors in it. I'm not gonna swear to it. It might not be Lee Majors. It might be Michael Landon. I forgot which one he was in. Unless he was in Bonanza and Lee Majors was in the other one. But Rawhide was definitely Clint Eastwood. There was the Virginian. There were a lot of fucking westerns. I didn't watch them all. I'm not really a fan of westerns. I don't like westerns, but anything with Clint Eastwood in it, and if he wants to give me a job, I'm down. Clint Eastwood was the only reason why I would watch a western. The Quick and the Dead, Hang 'Em High, etc., etc. But outside of that, I've never really liked westerns. I've never been a really big western fan. I did see a TV series called Into the West, which gave you the Native American perspective, which is good. And if you haven't seen it, you should go find that shit because it's awesome. And it's definitely a must watch, especially if you're native, because you don't know how like the native side of the West was done. And also, it's good if you're also Chinese because it brings in Chinese and how they had to help build the railroads, etc., etc. So it's pretty good. The only other Western movie that I like outside of anything with Clint Eastwood in it was The Young Guns. I liked the first one. Wasn't so fond of the second one because I was confused because the first one ended kind of funny, and then some people who supposedly died in the first one were still alive in the second one. So I was like, okay, how the hell does this work? But okay, retconning is a thing. So that being said, when I was a kid, my very first comic book at 3 years old was Jonah Hex. I recall him having a Native American partner slash sidekick, but not in many things. I think the sidekick was like the go-between. Like if Jonah needed to cross like land mass that belonged to natives, he would call this native, and the native would make it so he could have safe passage. Take all that shit with a grain of salt. I was 3. All right. As I got older, when I finally found out that I was part native, it was a culture shock because I always thought I was just black and white. I never thought I was part native. And then on my dad's side, his mother's mother was native, and I'm like, when you're a kid, you don't see race. Not really. You're taught racism by society, by family. You're taught that shit. But when you were a kid and your grandmother's skin tone does not look like yours, that does not make her any less your grandmother. And then when you see other people and you're like, okay, well, they don't look like us. But kids don't see that shit. You have to teach a kid what color they are, what race they are. You teach that shit to kids. Kids don't know that shit when they're born. Why you think kids are always happy until they hit like the 5th grade? Because about the 5th grade is when reality kicks in. That's when you start realizing racism is a thing. For the average kid now, it's probably a lot better. But when I was a kid, racism was a thing from the 2nd grade to the 5th grade. All right? You know how many times I was told I didn't want to be playing with you because you're not really black, you're half white. Those were not the words used, they were derivatives that was used. And on the white side, it was the same thing. And it wasn't until Miss Conrad, I thank you, Miss Conrad, who brought out the fact that I was part Native. And the more I denied it, the more problems I got until I went home, had a heart-to-heart with my mom, called my dad, I was like, yeah, your great-grandmother is a Native American on his side. Now, my grandmother on my mother's side is part Native and part black, or all Native. We're not sure because she was adopted, so we don't know how that rolls. So I am going to be taking another DNA test because Ancestry's taking forever. I am going to go to 23andMe. I'm also going to do the CRI and see what the fuck I am because it's getting on my nerve not knowing. But anyway, that being said, my greatest shames were wanting to be a cowboy. Greatest shames. Until 1987 or 88 when I could be both. With the exception of being short. There was a superhero on TV named Bravestar. He was a marshal of New Texas, a planet that had 3 suns, land of precious ore, the carrion rush outlaws by the score, and he had to fight this guy named Tex X who looked like Skeletor on crack. Notice I said crack, because Skeletor already looks like he's on steroids, for those old enough to know this cartoon. So once I had accepted my heritage, things got a little bit dicey. You thought I was going to say easy to know, shit got dicey. Because one, the first thing that went wrong was Miss Conrad told me I had to carve some bars of soap into canoes. And she said, which you don't put this kind of pressure on anybody, but she put so much pressure on me that I was bound to fail. And I did. And she goes, you're going to carve the best canoes because you're part Native. Those canoes look like 3 piles of crap from a hot horse's ass. And when I took him back to school, I told Miss Conrad, because she also got my ass beat that day for all that soap that I tore up. I told Miss Conrad, I said, well, whatever Native I came from, they must have been scouts, because they sure as hell did not leave me the carving gene. I can't carve anything. To this day, I don't think I can still carve. I'm thinking about going to get a bar of soap and carving it into a canoe. But I want to buy the right equipment first before I look like a fucking idiot. I might want to buy 2 bars of soap just to be on the safe side. I'm probably going to buy Dove because it's already angled like a canoe. So, Anyway, that being said, Bravestar was a turning point in realization for me. And then Lou Diamond Phillips had this movie called A Renegade's Out. So why am I bringing all this up? Because these are the bad sides of me accepting my Native heritage. When I worked at Kegler's, local bowling alley here in Charlottesville, some white dude, I'm not going to say he was racist. I'm just going to say he was going through some shit. And I've told you guys this before, so I'll give you the long and short. For 3 years, he called me Chief. I don't like being called Chief. Just like I didn't like being called the N-word. Just like I don't like being called half-breed all the time. And you have no how many times that me and other people in my family have been singled out and called half-breeds because of our skin tone. As you can see, if you look in the light, you see this is exceptionally light because this is my true color, and this is the sun-earned color. Sun-turned from working and not wearing long sleeve shirts. Even in the cold, I would just I start sweating, so I don't want that shit all up on me. So I'll wear short sleeve shirts. And the thing is, it really defines you when you can pull yourself up by the bootstraps and deal with that shit and keep moving on, And then, there's some downsides to this. So have a seat now, because now it's time for the downsides. The downsides are the racism that I've gotten from some natives, only 2. The racism I got from blacks and the racism I got from whites. So having an entire month of your heritage kind of makes you do a soul search and stuff. Now, once upon a time, I had a dream. I will tell you that dream in the other video because it was a 3-on-3 dream, or it's a long story. I had to consult a dream person that I work with, and I will probably have to consult this person again because I've recently had some dreams that has nothing to do with me getting Moderna versus Pfizer, or at least I hope it doesn't. But anyway, I want you guys to understand your heritages in your life are probably the most important thing that you will have. It is the only thing that you can really cling on to that no one should be able to take from you. And sometimes they can. So honor your heritages. Now speaking of that, let me clarify before I end this video on why I am going with Echo Fang Grey Wolf from now on until the day I die versus James Williams Jr. If you meet me in the street, you can call me either one, straight up and down. Especially once I get well known. If you can't remember that my name is Echo, then you can call me James, which is my government name. But, I want to be bigger than Jay-Z without the scandal. So if Echo Fan Grey Wolves grows big and I'm bigger than Jay-Z without the scandal and you remember me only as Echo Fan Grey Wolf, that's fine. But if you remember me only as James Williams Jr., that's fine. But since the only true way I can honor my heritage is to now build myself out as a native versus being mixed, and it's what I have to do. So as a person who's part native, I'm doing that from now on, with or without the blessings of everyone else. That being said, I'll tell you guys about the dream in the next video. Thank you for watching. Happy Indigenous/Native History Month.